And welcome to the second hour of American Agenda. I'm Bob Sellers, tackling the day's stories in an interesting way here on Newsmax. We're joined by our family of co-hosts, attorney and former prosecutor Ameer Benno, former U.S. attorney and founder of the Tolman Group, Brett Tolman, along with criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Vinoo. Gentlemen, we have heard for months the president and many Republicans have voiced concerns about the security of mail-in ballots. And we heard that again yesterday from the president. The president put out this tweet yesterday about delaying the election, perhaps. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, though, have been trying to make it clear that that's not going to happen. But he did cause great grinding and gnashing of teeth. But Ameer, let's talk about the details here. The president, there are some legitimate concerns about what people could do with mail-in ballots, but putting that aside for a second, let's talk about the possibility of pushing back an election. Can a president do that on his own?
No, the president can't do that on his own, and I don't think the president was suggesting that he could do that on his own either. I think he was merely making an inquiry, sort of spitballing on the issue. Obviously, the Constitution vests the power to set the election day in the Congress, and there's nothing the president can do to get around that. But, you know, we've seen in New York and we've seen in Pennsylvania when we had mail-in voting for the primaries at the end of June, it took them over a month to even get the ballots counted. And so I think his concern is even if there's no contested election, if there's no contest, if it's not close, we won't even have a result possibly in time for inauguration, which, and then when you add into the mix,
for inauguration?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're talking from November to the election to January 20th.
I understand election night, but you're saying it could take that long?
Well, I certainly think that's a possibility, especially if there's concerns over fraud and if there's litigation and there's ballot counting. Plus, you're going to be taxing the Postal Service. Let me just say this. Before this pandemic, our Postal Service was just the pits. And now, as you can see, during the pandemic, I think it's been a common complaint. People aren't getting their mail. And to overload now the postal system with what would amount to, we had 150 million people vote in the last presidential election. If they're going to mail ballots to everybody and everybody's going to have to mail those back, that's 260 additional pieces of mail that an already overloaded postal system has to. So I don't think that it's you know, that beyond the pale to suggest that this might create problems beyond Inauguration Day.
Okay. Well, then let me ask Vinoo this. As I understand it, it says January 20th, the next person takes office. If there is no one duly elected at that point, because that's when the term ends of the current president, then the Speaker of the House takes the oath of office to become president. That would be Nancy Pelosi, who's not expected to lose her election, or the Democrats lose the House. Is that what could happen?
That's not going to happen. Look, I think the Trump's problem here is that he's Trump, right? So what gets him into power is also what may potentially cause him to lose this election, right? He's nervous. Reports are that he's nervous. He's trailing big behind the polls. But he was also in 2016, so he should take some solace from that fact. Right. And he came back and he won. So here's the thing that it does by this tweet, and so many people have condemned him on both sides of the aisle. Stephen Calabrese, the head of the Federalist Society, wrote an op-ed trashing him, calling it a fascistic remark. The issue for him is what it makes him look like, right? While there may be legitimate concerns, I don't see it going into January for counting mail-in ballots. I think it'll be done. The issue, though, for him is how it makes it look. He was interviewed on Fox News last week with Chris Wallace, and he made an important statement there. And he said that Democrats want to keep businesses closed and keep people scared and keep the economy from reviving. Well, the economy shrunk 32% last quarter. You should be talking about that. You should be out there roaring. Let's get businesses back.
That's on a yearly basis, by the way. It's more like 9% on the quarterly basis. If you multiply it times 4, you get that. But go ahead. I get your point.
But the point is that he should be talking about making America great again, right? Let's get back to what it was before the coronavirus, right?
Right.
So that's what he should be talking about. He should be then getting people out there to, in essence, opening up and criticizing Google, Twitter, YouTube for locking down those doctors who spoke about hydroxychloroquine and other issues and talking about masks. That's what he should be doing. And I think he will get the majority of people potentially to vote for him.
Yeah.
But by this kind of hedging, it just makes him look weak.
Yeah, even the Wall Street Journal today, Brett, criticized that. But what's your take on what's going on?
Well, I'm not a fan of the tweet, but that's President Trump, and he rallies his base, and I think he understands. I mean, I look at the response, and it's somewhat predictable. Those that are in his corner, firmly in his corner, think he can do no wrong, didn't see anything wrong with it, and really thought it was just sort of trolling and throwing out the notion of fraud and trying to make an impact on that. And the critics came back and hit him hard. You know, for me, the issue with at the heart of this is a last-minute shift to a new way of doing things.
Right.
We do not do that well in government. I've been in government long enough to know that you can't just shift quickly. Here in Utah, for example, we have mail-in ballots, but it has taken a lot of years and a lot of thoughtful, fashioning of how to do it and who can register and what it takes to be able to do it is very different than what is being proposed now, which we know does result in fraud.
Yeah, and just so people know, the process of getting a ballot, if it's a mail-in or absentee, may be different. You may have to request them in some places, but the process after that is the same. So I guess I'm wondering, I think you make a really good point, Brett, about a lot of the infrastructure isn't set up for this. So Ameer, shouldn't the president then be addressing that infrastructure between now and then?
Well, I think he is by saying that mail-in ballots are really unnecessary in this case. I mean, look, we go to drugstores, we go to supermarkets, we have safety protocols in place. We sanitize, we wear face masks. There's no reason except for those.
I think, you know what? I hate to do this to you, Ameer, but I'm kind of losing you there. Sound like you're underwater, and I can see you're not. So I'm just going to move to Vinoo for a second. I think you make a really good point. The president shouldn't be talking about these things. One thing that struck me is when he was asked, I think it was by Sean Hannity, what's your next term going to look like? He had lots of answers before his first term. It seems like he needs to come up with that answer. It's like you're saying, okay, start moving forward. These are the things I'm going to do. We really haven't seen him establish that just yet.
Correct. And I think that as long as he talks about his strengths, I think then these poll numbers are going to close, because ultimately there are a lot of doubts for moderates, for registered Democrats about Joe Biden, because it's a question of who's his running mate, right? So Joe Biden faces an issue similar to John McCain back in 2008. A lot of people like McCain, but once he picked Palin, it was all downhill for independents, conservatives, and a lot of moderates. If Biden makes the wrong pick for his vice president, then Trump can really attack that.
Yeah.
Because in the end, for people that didn't like Trump, myself included, at least you know whether I personally didn't like Vice President Pence,
right.
We knew that he wasn't going to blow up the country.
Yeah, and Brett,
I think that's the same
I just want to give Brett a chance.
Biden.
I'm sorry. Sometimes with the sound thing, I don't mean to interrupt you. I just want to give Brett a chance at the end of the segment. A lot of people are waiting for Biden to get out, and his picks are not perfect. None of the picks he has out there are perfect.
No, they're not perfect. There are some that are very concerning. Look, this is a very treacherous time for the Democrats, and the president has a lot of red meat out there. I'd avoid trying to attack Biden personally. A lot of people are starting to feel sorry for the guy, and he's not presenting well. But let's take a look at what that red meat is. I mean, the Democrats have embraced far, far left policies now, and at the very heart of it, you have COVID, and you have the refusal to acknowledge a treatment that works, and then you have the defund the police, burn down the cities, and the predominantly Marxist, socialist mentality that's being embraced, that is just ripe for the president to hit his platform with a comforting message that we are going to restore order in this country, but at the same time, we're going to grow our consensus that we want to have law and order and we want to get past COVID.
All right. I think it's a good point you make about burning down the cities. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about a little bit what's going on in the cities and how does that change, and how would it change if Biden were president? A lot of people think it would just get worse. We'll be back with more of American Agenda after this.